Let's talk about bad guys. Am I in focus? Okay. So I mentioned in my Facebook Live last week that I was currently listening to You Love Me, which is the third book in the You series by Caroline Kepnes. They're fantastic books. They're even better audiobooks. If you're into audiobooks, you definitely need to check them out. Top-notch narration. But they feature the main character, Joe Goldberg. And Joe has done a lot of really bad things. Yet, it didn't take but maybe like a chapter or two for me to instantly find myself once again rooting for Joe to win out, rooting for Joe to get the girl. Here's a character that over the course of 3 books has been directly or indirectly responsible for several people's deaths. He has kidnapped several people, and he has intentionally ruined people's lives and reputations, all in the effort to win over whatever girl he's chasing in that book. Yet here I am again rooting for him. So I just got my gears turning, and I wanted to stop and ask myself, why am I still rooting for this guy? See, the thing about Joe is just he's super likable. When you listen to him tell his story, whether you're reading the book or listening to the audiobook, or even if you're just watching the show that they put out on Netflix, you find that you have experienced so many of the things that Joe has experienced. You might find yourself thinking, oh my gosh, I've had that exact same thought about that type of person or about that thing. He tells things in such a relaxed, relatable fashion. You might have met the exact same types of people and dealt with similar irritations. And odds are you've also experienced some of the same frustrations that can sometimes come along with building a new relationship with a new person. All those things work together to kind of hone in on one word, and that word is empathy. I think the reason that empathy and even sympathy are such vital components of a good character is because if you look at what the ultimate number one goal of a book or a movie or a TV show is, it's to keep the reader or the viewer engaged, to keep them completely invested and want to go along on this journey with the characters till the very end. And if you don't have strong characters or characters that the reader or viewer are going to care about, they're certainly not going to care about what happens to them, and you might lose them somewhere along the way. This is especially problematic if you're in the horror genre, where so much of a movie or book's plot revolves around putting these characters in some sort of peril. If the person watching or reading doesn't care about that outcome, you've probably done something wrong. Over on my podcast, the Hallowed Horror podcast that I do with my co-host Jason, we have a rating system, and one of the categories that we rate films in is the strength of character. And as I started thinking about this bad guy, villain, strong character conversation, if you go back and listen to a lot of our previous episodes, I'd be willing to bet that one of the sections that we debate the longest between us, and quite possibly have the most difference of opinion quite frequently, is when it comes to discussing character, which I think just further hits home my point that characters are such a vital part to an overall film's success. I believe that strong characters can ultimately lift otherwise subpar film, and on the flip side of that coin, weak characters could also bring down a film that might otherwise be really strong in a lot of other aspects. But going back to empathy and sympathy and relatability in characters, the more I started thinking about Joe Goldberg from the You series, the more I really started questioning whether there had ever been any other previous bad guys or villains that I found myself always rooting for throughout the course of the story. The first one that kind of popped into my mind was Walter White from Breaking Bad. That's a fantastic story arc. You fall in love with the guy in the beginning, you're rooting for him because of a certain situation, and then by the end of it, even though he has done some really, really awful things, the odds are there's still a big part of you that's hoping he wins in the end. But I was trying to think of some more because I knew there had to be some, so I reached out to you guys on Twitter and Facebook, and I asked a question. Tell me some of the villains or bad guys that you've rooted for in books or movies or TV shows. And you had a lot of answers. I've never seen Dexter. But one of the things that jumped out to me almost instantly while I was reading through your guys' responses was that none of the characters that you had listed as the bad guy or the villain, because yes, when you zoom out and look at the grand scope of the stories, that's what they're being categorized as, none of them to me felt like they were truly bad. They had just kind of been regular people who had their own demons or their own skeletons in their closet, or were dealing with certain situations in a less than pleasant manner, making choices that obviously were leading them down a path that was not quite the straight and narrow that society would deem acceptable, and they did a lot of really, really bad things. But does that mean that they were truly a 100% bad person? Did it make them truly evil, if you want to be kind of melodramatic about it? And I don't think that the answer was yes for any of them. Which then got me thinking, is there any such thing as a 100% evil character? Come with me. Definitely those guys. So yeah, of course, we're always going to have the slashers and the monsters and the demons and the evil spirits and all that other fun, kooky stuff that makes up so much of the horror genre. And don't get me wrong, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Those movies are so much fun. Some of my favorite horror films of all time, if not some of my favorite films of all time, fall into those categories. But I don't think that means that as a creator, you should ever put less stock in understanding your characters. And in fact, I feel like if you're setting out to write a book or a screenplay, I think one of the biggest things that you really should focus on in the beginning are whether this is going to be something that is more character driven or something that is more story driven or narrative driven. Because I think if you can figure out where your starting point is in the beginning, you're going to have an easier time building your other elements of your story around that versus trying to figure it out later on. So before I wrap this video up, I do want to make one more point that for me personally really exemplifies everything that I've been trying to say today when it comes to strength of character. One of my favorite novels of all time is It by Stephen King. It's about 1,000 pages long. I've read it twice, and I have found that whenever it comes up in conversation with other people, the one thing that I find myself talking about the most when it comes to that book has nothing to do with Pennywise or any of the scary moments. My love for that book really is almost 100% reliant on the relationships of the characters. I love the Losers Club. I love the way that King writes about them when they are younger and their more coming of age years, and then again in the second part of the book when they are older as adults, coming back and seeing Derry and seeing themselves for the first time, all the baggage and drama that come along with them. It's just some of the most beautiful writing about friendships and growing up and life in general that I've ever experienced. And that is what I always take away from it when I think about it. The scares are kind of just like the cherry on top of the sundae. They definitely help flesh out the book and they make the book what it is. But for me, it and my love of that book has very little to do with the clown and a lot more to do with the kids. So that is it for today, guys. No more talk about good characters, bad characters, any characters at all. I've said everything I have to say about it. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did and you want to do me a huge favor, if you could hit that thumbs up down below, that'd be great. If you want to subscribe to the channel to see future videos, that would be awesome as well. Hope you guys stay safe, be well, and I will talk to you in the next one. Bye.